Welcome to Full On Insanity with Nicola Matt. Thank you all for joining me. Today I had the pleasure of sitting down and chatting with sci-fi author Liam Gibbs.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. How have you been doing today?
I've been doing pretty good. It's kind of a lazy day for me today.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been writing a little bit, trying to get a little bit more work done. So what genre did you write in? I'm sorry, usually I look to see, look everybody up before I start the interview, but I'm kind of flying blind today.
That's fine. It's a sci-fi, generally speaking. It's kind of a futuristic thing as well as comic books stuck together.
Okay, sounds cool. So when you say sci-fi, is it like apocalyptic, futuristic, space, aliens?
Space, aliens, futuristic.
Okay, awesome. Sounds cool. How long have you been a writer?
That's a hard question to answer. Apparently my parents have been telling me I've been writing since 4. So I don't know if you want to take that as an answer. How long have I been serious about it? Probably the last 10 years, I guess.
Okay. So is this something that did you always want to be a writer, or was it something that just kind of grew?
No, I always wanted to be a writer. I kind of knew that from a long time ago. It's one of those things, like, when you can't not do something. Like when you're not doing it, it bugs you. Like when you're not working on your writing, it bugs you because you need to progress. You need to put some mileage on something. So that's how I knew that I always wanted to be a writer.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm one of those, and they say that if you're a writer, if you're not writing or thinking about writing, and that's kind of the way I am, it's almost like a panic. I need to be writing. I need to be doing that. I need to be, working on something. And if you're not actively writing, it kind of flows around in the back of your head constantly. Always something, twirling. Those gears are turning in the back of your mind. So, yeah,
I totally get that.
Yeah. What drove you to actually start writing? I understand you've probably been doing this your whole life, but 10 years ago when you decided to get serious about it, what was kind of the path that you took to realize this is what I want to do and this is my passion?
Well, I'd written this series like back when I was in, I guess, grade school, right? And so it was kind of one of those things I played around with every so often. I put it away for a few months. I'd get back to it. I'd put it away. I'd get back to it. And then I decided one day I was going to write kind of a shorter story. These are all novels. And one day I wanted to write a shorter story. So I kind of wrote maybe 10 pages of that. And then that was one of those things I put away. And then one day, I don't know why, I was just digging around on my files on my computer. And I found this thing. And I opened it up and I went, this isn't that bad. And I started writing, started finishing it up, writing up, editing. And then I realized I could actually do something with this. So I did. I got it kind of prepared for agents and things like that. But then again, I never did anything with it. I just let it sit on my computer, even though it was ready to go. And then, I wrote a second and a third and a fourth. And then I think, yada, yada, yada. I went up to, I think, number 15 or so. And then, I realized, I'm showing this off to a couple of my friends, but that's it. I kind of wanted more people to see this. And so somebody I knew from Facebook, they posted, I'm running a Kickstarter campaign. And, it's going to be successful. And, they finished it off and they did a second one. I thought, why don't I do that? Why don't I get this thing going with a Kickstarter campaign? That way I can get it self-published. I'll have all the control over it. Nobody's going to be tampering around with it other than me. I'll have the product that I want. And so it kind of ran with that. I did a Kickstarter campaign, was successful enough to actually do the first 2 books. And so it went from there. And now I'm continuing. I'm going to have the 4th one out soon. And right now I've got 19 of these sitting on my computer, so I've got a little ways to go before I can get the whole series out, but that's where it is right now.
Awesome. So I take it you are completely independently published.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about going with a trade publishing, or is that something that you kind of just really would rather stay self-published?
I did think about it, actually. I did meet with a couple of agents, and one of them was actually pretty enthusiastic about it. But just can't remember why, but things never went through. I sent it off to a few publishers, and I didn't hear back a whole lot from them. But I decided that, I'd heard horror stories where they were, publishers would be changing, titles and dictating artwork and getting tampering too much with the product. And I decided I didn't want that. I wanted this to be what I wanted to do. And I knew it was kind of an uphill battle. When you have a publisher or an agent, they fight for you. But when you self-publish, you're doing all of the work for yourself. And I realized that going in. And I don't regret that. I don't regret doing any of the work. So I did think about wanted to do some traditional publishing, but I decided against it because I wanted something that I had complete control over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard those same horror stories, and of course now there's a lot of the little smaller companies that are slowly, shutting down. I had a hybrid publisher, as close to trade publishing as you could get and still have some amount of control over the work, and it went under. And that is, since I decided to self-publish, when I was younger, I was trying to get traditionally published. But after my publisher went under, and I was incredibly miserable the entire time, the whole year that I was under them, and I only gave them one book. I had several more that they wanted. It was only willing to give them that one because I was so unhappy. But yeah, you get those horror stories all the time.
That must have been nerve-wracking.
It was. For me, as soon as I signed the contract and got logged in to their website and started reading around, about how everything worked, I just immediately, alarm bells started going off for me. I regretted it almost instantaneous and had to talk myself off the ledge of contacting the owners of the company and telling them I changed my mind. I wanted out of the contract.
Right.
But I was determined. I did it to make a point because so many people were under the impression that if you were traditionally published, you didn't have to do any of the work. You pretty much got to do nothing but write. So I did it, to make a point that that's not how the trade publishing industry works any more than, being independently published is, super easy. None of that is true. You're going to work your butt off regardless of whether you're trade published or indie published. So I stuck with it.
That's true.
When I got the email stating that, they were closing their doors and that we were getting our reprint rights back, I screamed. I literally jumped up from my desk and started screaming. I was so happy. So, but yeah, absolutely, I get, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of authors choose to independently publish is because we want that control, to be able to tell our stories the way that we want to tell them without the extreme amount of tampering that goes on, in the editing phase, and not having any control over the graphic artwork that's put on there. And as you say, I have heard sometimes that they would tweak what they call tweaking the title and change it around a bit. And I find it interesting that you did were able to do this through Kickstarter campaigns, because one thing that I've noticed on Facebook lately, and it's really one of my pet peeves, is authors coming down on other authors because they've decided to do a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter campaign to try to get their books produced, because it takes a lot of money to be able to hire the professionals to do the editing and the artwork and the formatting and the proofreading and everything that goes with it. So I'm glad that yours were successful. Did you get any blowback from anyone when you decided to do the Kickstarter campaign?
No, actually, everybody's pretty enthusiastic about it. They're pretty supportive. I was actually surprised by how supportive people were.
Yeah, and that's awesome that they were. And I have heard of some authors that were able to successfully do GoFundMes and Kickstarter campaigns. Unfortunately, what I have noticed in the indie community is a lot of writers have a tendency to frown upon that, and, their thing is, well, you either save up to do it or you don't put the book out. You don't ask other people for money. And I'm sitting here kind of scratching my head going, but, other artists get to do it. That's how the vast majority of the fans these days are getting their albums created. They are taking the support that their fan base is willing to give them to get the next album out, for them to be able to do that. Painters do it. Screenwriters do it. I don't quite understand why everyone looks down upon authors when they are trying to, I can understand not saying, well, I want to write, give me money. That's different than someone saying, you know what, if you will pre-order this and pay a little bit extra, then you will get a finished copy once it's done. Those are two completely different things. So no, I don't believe that you should just, pay somebody's way just because they quote unquote want to be a writer. You should offer something for that. A copy of a book, bookmarks, what have you. But it amazes me at the amount of backlash I've noticed in the independent author community when people try to do GoFundMe or Kickstarters. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I thought, like when I was doing it, I met with nothing but support. But I mean, like it's one thing if you're winging it and you don't know what you're doing, and you got this thing that's half finished, and maybe you'll finish it, maybe you won't. You're just kind of begging for money. And it's another thing to have a product and you know where you're going with it, and all you need is just that little bit of help. And if these people will help me, then I'll reward them with this, and I'll reward them with that. It's just coming up with creative ways to give back to the people that were giving to you.
Exactly, and I think that's really the way the Kickstarter and the GoFundMes are, especially the Kickstarter. Maybe not necessarily the GoFundMe, but the Kickstarter and the Indiegogo and crowdfunding. It's no different than finding and the word just lost my mind. Investors, that's the word I was looking for. Investors in a company. That's what you're doing, is you're investing in this product.
Exactly.
I think where a lot of people have problems with it is when it's someone who's either wanting someone to fund their writing career so that they don't have to work a job, or when it's someone who doesn't necessarily have a book at all. It's just something that they're kind of tossing around. It's different when you've got the product pretty much finished and you just need help, paying someone to edit it or paying for the graphic artwork or the formatting. And I totally get that. I understand that. I'm not going to pay someone to sit on their butt and write because that's what they want to do. Hell, I want to do it full time too, but unfortunately I have bills to pay, and it's no one else's responsibility to pay those bills but mine. So I totally get that, but even those people that were offering a copy of the finished product seem to have been getting a lot of backlash. So I'm very excited and happy to know that yours was worked out and that you were getting a lot of support. I really think that that's what we need to be doing in the independent community, is supporting each other. And unfortunately, I understand that people are my competition, but at the same time, there's no need to be judgmental or harsh or, pretty much, pardon my language, pretty much being a bitch about it, which is what I see all the time, is people just pretty much being bitches towards each other. I don't get it. It boggles my mind.
Well, I mean, I always got the impression that crowdfunding was like one of those we're all in this together communities. There were some people that they contacted me and said, "Hey, my Kickstarter campaign is very similar to yours. Why don't we, we donate to each other? Because the more funds you get, the better your campaign looks to other people. So even though somebody's funding $20 to you and you're funding $20 to them, the net result is zero. You're still giving a good impression to the other people that want to back you, because they'll go, oh, this guy backed me, this other guy backed him. I feel more comfortable backing him as well. So a lot of people, when you get into the crowdfunding thing, it seems to be like a team effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And that team effort, I think, is where the independent community sometimes falls flat, is we aren't helping each other. You have some groups that are more than willing to help out and share the word and, kind of spread when you have new releases coming out. But what I'm experiencing is the vast majority of people, it's kind of like every man for themselves. But you're absolutely correct. When it comes to crowdfunding, it really is a team effort, as it should be, because that's, basically what it was designed for, everybody kind of helping each other out.
Exactly.
So when you write, are you a plotter or a pantser? Are you one of those that you have to outline everything, or do you just kind of sit and let it go?
I used to be a pantser, and I don't know what happened, but something my brain just decided I'm not doing this anymore. We're gonna have to think things through, and I find that when I try to fly by the seat of my pants, I'll get maybe to the beginning of Act 2, and then I'll just I give up. I have to plot it out at that point. But at the same time, when I plot out everything, sometimes the ending just doesn't match what my notes were. Like, if you read my notes and you read the final product of one of my stories, you'll say these are two completely different stories. So maybe I'm a bit of both, but I find that now when I'm starting out, I have to plan things out, or it's going to fall flat by the beginning of Act 2.
Yeah, and there was someone who made the comment. Someone had asked that on Facebook, and someone had made the comment that they were a planter. They do both. They kind of plot as they go, and I guess that's kind of where I fall at. That I'm pretty much kind of winging it, but I get to a certain point, and I've noticed that the more complex the storyline is, and I imagine that when you're dealing, with science fiction and everything, when you have these complex storylines, that you really do have to plan and plot out a lot more, or it falls apart. The Before the Sunrise series that I do is like, it's a modge podge of science fiction and paranormal. It's what I call parasci. Because I've tried to merge two entirely different things together. And the first two books that I put out, I really had to plan and plot out a lot more than what I normally feel comfortable with. So, yeah, I'm one of those that I'm kind of more of a hybrid. Or, as that author said, a planter. I'm kind of plotting things as I go.
Right.
What's the hardest thing about being a writer for you?
For me? Probably the hardest thing is probably paper edits. This is going to sound really weird and kind of trivial, I guess, but when I have to print it out and then just dissect every single word. Do I need this word? Do I need to add something here? Where was that other thing? Because now I'm contradicting myself over here. Now I'm going to have to go back searching several pages. Because I find that each page takes like a painstaking 9 or 10 minutes to get through. And when you got something that's, 300 pages or 150 pages or whatever, it's going to take forever. And then having to go back and put all those things on the computer, it's like you're editing it twice. Mm-hmm. I find that to be the hardest part. And I know that sounds a bit trivial, but for me, that's the worst part of it.
Yeah, I don't find that trivial at all. And that's kind of the way I am. It's the rewrites and finding those plot holes and trying to fill them in. And I find myself, especially in a series of me, when I'm writing the next book in the series, I have, the paperbacks of all the books in the series, and there's little sticky notes and little flags and everything in it where I'm going through, and I come to a part, and I want to make sure I didn't contradict or make a plot hole for something that happened, in an earlier book, and I'm sitting there flipping through the pages. Where was that part, and sticking little flags and sticky notes everywhere. So, yeah, for me, the hardest part, aside from actually finding time to write, is having to go in and find those plot holes and trying to kind of fill that leaking ship, so to speak.
Right.
What's the easiest part for you?
The easiest part is probably the plotting, actually. The thing we just talked about. Would be the plotting, either that or getting to go out to the shows. And it's not easy per se, but it's fun. So you don't even notice the work. So it makes the time fly by. So that's what's easy. Getting out to go to the shows. And, I usually go to these comic book conventions. So you see a lot of great cosplaying and stuff like that. And you kind of want to, sometimes you know what they're doing with their costumes. Sometimes you don't. You want to talk to them about it. And just, people coming up to you and talking about, or they're asking you questions about, so what is it you're doing? What is this product? And you being able to present this thing that you worked so long to do. Just having the final product there and being able to talk to somebody about it.
Yes, absolutely. And I find that that's probably not necessarily the easy part, but the part that I enjoy the most about being a writer is when people show interest and they actually want to sit and discuss what's happening. Especially when I come across someone who's actually read the book and they have questions or, wanting to pick my brain about why did you write this, or I'm confused about this part, or I felt like there was some underlying meaning to this and there was something hidden that you were trying to say. that is the part that I absolutely love. Unfortunately, I do not have a very large fan base, so those conversations are few and far between, and I kind of feel like I'm holding people hostage when they actually want to sit and chat about it, because it's like they start to walk away, and I'm like, no, let me tell you more. And I kind of feel like that little clingy person going, please don't leave me. I want to talk some more about it.
Well, they'll get more and more as you go along, right?
Yeah, definitely. Apart from writing, what else do you like to do? Do you have any hobbies, video games, anything that's specific that you like to do to relax?
I like to go to the gym, actually. Lift weights. I do a little bit of cardio as well, but mostly it's lifting weights. You mentioned video games, and I find that lately the Dead Rising series, as old as that is taking up a lot of my free time right now.
And that's awesome. My husband is a huge video gamer, and unfortunately, it's not something that, I guess maybe it's because my hand-eye coordination is not the best in the world, and I've never really liked playing video games. Even, when it was something simple like, the original Nintendo, that was still beyond my skill set. So.
Oh, you just got to get the practice in.
I guess so, and that's what my husband said. Oh, it's just because you've never played before, and I'm like, I don't know. It's just not something I ever could get into. I guess that's just like anything else. It's something you're either interested in or you're not. The only video game that I ever actually got into was playing The Sims on my computer. But The funny thing is I never actually played with them. What I would do is go in and bulldoze down all the houses and kept it in like build mode and would sit there and build houses and decorate them. And my husband told me, he's like, why don't you take drafting? I'm like, I'm not interested in drafting. He's like, but you spend 6 hours building this elaborate house in The Sims. Like, yeah, that was fun though. Have you actually taken a drafting class? Have you seen AutoCAD? That's not fun.
Well, if it's not something that you think you want to get into, then stay far away.
Yeah,
sometimes you get too many hobbies, and
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that I had a problem with for a while is I had too many hobbies, and I'm still like that. There's too many things that I like to do for me to really stay focused on one thing.
Yeah, like the least amount of hobbies, the better.
Absolutely. Okay, so you write sci-fi. How much of your books are the people in them are actually based on actual people or events? How much of it is actually real versus something that you just completely made up?
That's probably a hard question to answer too. I mean, events probably not so much. I don't remember any single event that actually got in there. A lot of it, like sometimes I kind of pay homages to things like Transformers and Walking Dead. You might see some stuff in there, like this event is similar to this thing that happened, to a Transformer or whatever. As far as people getting in there, I mean, I guess to some degree, I don't have any character that I based off any specific person, right? But if somebody says something, or I find that they have a mannerism that's interesting, I might stick that into a character. So, a bunch of my friends or a bunch of people that I know might get into a bunch of characters here and there. But as far as like some kind of one-to-one transition, like this guy is definitely based on this guy, this character is definitely this person over here, that never happens. I might put a bit of myself in there if I find there's some mannerisms that I find funny or annoying or quirky or whatever. I might stick those in as well. But I guess just kind of a general kind of collection of experiences and things like that, things that I picked up along the way here and there. People watching, I guess, things like that.
Okay. I must be one of the little weird ones, because so far everyone that I've asked has kind of had that same answer. It's just a little bit here and there, but not really based on any one particular person. And I'm right backwards. I love paying homage, especially to bands. I am a huge music fan. I'd always intended upon going into music journalism in college, and unfortunately that's not the way that my life turned out. So bands and music has always been a huge part of my life, and I love paying homage to the bands and to the band members. And I find myself oftentimes facing my characters. off of individual band members or some of their mannerisms, and just a modge podge of people. But apparently I must be in the minority there, and now it kind of makes me feel like I'm not really creating anything on my own. I kind of feel like I'm stealing other people and kind of making them into a book.
Oh, it's good to be different.
Yeah, I guess so. Given that you are a sci-fi writer, how much research goes into creating your storylines?
Not really much at all. The weird thing about sci-fi is, I mean, you gotta kind of adhere to regular science. What actually exists. You can't stray too far. But I put mine far into the future, and I made my science fiction a little bit quirky enough that if I wanted to kind of fudge the rules of science, people would let me get away with it. It's a suspension of disbelief. Like if I wanted you to be able to hear an explosion out in outer space, no one's gonna really care. I mean, how did this person get to that person going faster than light? I'm not gonna really detail exactly the physics behind it and everything like that. People just kind of gloss over it. It's almost like the Futurama of written work. Nobody questions why Futurama, the society exists the way it does. Why are these societal rules? Why are these physics rules? They just watch it and they have fun. So it's sort of the same thing with mine. Why does society work this way? Why are people this stupid or immature or whatever? How can something operate this way? Well, it's a comedy, so you can kind of get away with those things more so than you could with a drama or with an action. So as far as research goes, I might research a little bit in a faster than light travel, but I've never really explained it, and I don't really intend to. So I don't really research the details and how to make that actually happen, or if I fudge the rules, what rules can I fudge? How can AI exist? How can we get this thing going? Or, how can somebody teleport from one place to the next? Do I really have to break down the physics to it? I don't really get into that. So I kind of find putting it far into the future and making it a comedy helps me to get away with a lot more than what your regular writer would be able to get away with.
And I'm discovering that a lot. With the couple of science fiction writers that I have interviewed. With me, unfortunately, I don't do anything that's futuristic, and I find myself doing a lot of research, and it's usually on minor things, like just finding, with me, when I have people that are, in a band traveling around, I'm having to, literally sit there and Google how far and how long of a driving distance it is between two places so that I have that timeline correctly. I don't have them on the road for 15 hours doing something when it only took 6 hours to get in between the two places. So for me, it's really simple things like that I'm always having to sit there and research. But I am discovering that you have a lot more leeway that people are willing to let you get away with when you are dealing with science fiction. It almost makes me want to try to write one to see what I can get away with. I know I have some readers that are sticklers, that they can find the little inconsistencies so easy. And I'm more of someone that when I'm reading or watching something, I'm kind of in the moment. I don't really question. It's not floating around in the back of my head, well, that's not right, that's inaccurate. I just want to escape and enjoy and be in the now and just enjoy the story as it's unfolding, as opposed to sit there going, well, that actually couldn't happen in real life. Well, it's not real life. It's fiction. That's what we love about it, is being able to escape and, and go into those worlds that we would not normally get to go into. That's what I think is awesome, it's the most about writing fiction, is just being able to create something that would not normally exist.
Yeah, I agree. Like if we try to adhere to reality as much as possible, we kind of take some of the fun away out of escaping. I mean, we want to escape into something that can't exist, or there's only a slight possibility. We don't want to read a book just to read real life,
Exactly. That's me, and I really think that's why a lot of people enjoy the Harry Potter books so much, is because it is so far removed from real life that I really think that's why people got to enjoy them as much as they did, just because it's not a world, it's just not something that you could ever remotely come across in real life. And I find that extremely, as a writer, extremely fascinating to be able to come up with these worlds. And even though most of my stuff is set in present day, it's still the characters and what's going on around them isn't something that you're going to encounter on an everyday basis. And I absolutely love it. I love creating those worlds and coming up with something new and fun. Who has been your heaviest influence in your writing style? Was there any particular authors that you've read growing up that really has heavily influenced you, or has been a mentor, or that you feel has influenced your style more than others?
I don't know if anybody's been a specific mentor, but I mean, there are some writers that I kind of model myself after more than others. I like Stephen King and Dean Koontz, Paul Wilson, with his Repairman Jack stuff. As far as comic books, I was a huge, and nobody's ever heard of this anymore, but I was a huge New Warriors fan when I was growing up. So I apologize because I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, but Fabian Nicieza, he's the guy who made up Deadpool. For me, he's the guy who made up the New Warriors. And growing up, I had a lot of influence from that comic series, from stuff like Spider-Man. And then there's always been TV shows like Seinfeld, Futurama, Mystery Science Theater, getting the humor from things like that. Spaceballs, obviously, you can see a lot of Spaceballs influence in what I'm doing. So you can see from the comic book side of things, there's a lot of Spider-Man, X-Men, New Warriors, Walking Dead, stuff like that. And from the comedy stuff, there's all this, like what I mentioned, like Seinfeld, Futurama, Mystery Science Theater 3000. The Tick, I don't know if you've ever heard of The Tick. It was this cartoon series that lasted maybe 4 seasons, and they got that from a comic book that came out a short while before that, and that was a kind of a comedic take on comic book superheroes as well. So it's all of those influences kind of came together into what I'm doing right now.
I actually remember that cartoon, The Tick. He was dressed in a blue suit.
Yeah.
Yes, I vaguely don't remember what it was about, but I do remember the character. I can remember envisioning the character. And you're right, it was almost like a spoof of a comic book hero, which I found entertaining. I actually enjoyed it. What little bit I got to watch it, like I said, I vaguely remember it because, that's been how many years since that came out? Seems like I was a kid when that came out.
Well, it's I think 20 years old now or so.
Yeah, that sounds about right. High school, late high school, early 20s. But yes, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, what's your take on Star Wars?
My take on Star Wars, that was a huge influence as well. I loved it. I loved the whole, getting to explore the galaxy. Doing stuff that we probably can't do in real life. It's like what George Lucas, what he was doing was what I was explaining before, is just taking physics and just kind of throwing it out the window as much as you can and just pretending. And I think that's what George Lucas was doing. I mean, the faster than light travel that they do in Star Wars probably couldn't do that in real life. The Force probably never exists in real life. But he was taking something. He was taking science fiction, adding a little bit of magic or adding a little bit of fantasy to it. And my take on Star Wars is I think it was pretty groundbreaking, even more so. And I'm going to be shocked for this, probably even more so than Star Trek. Star Wars just kind of opened it up to a whole different audience way back in the 70s, and I think even back in the 90s, the late 90s, when they were starting to do the prequel trilogy, as badly received as those were, kind of opened it up to a even younger audience, an even newer audience, and even audiences that you would typically not see as, quote unquote nerds, and kind of opening it up that way. And I mean, if we look at it where it is right now, everybody knows what Star Wars is. Now there's a shared universe. Everybody wants to see what's going on in the Star Wars universe now. So I think Star Wars was probably the biggest science fiction influence for me that I can name off the top of my head anyway. even more so maybe than comic books or Spaceballs and things like that. So growing up, I loved them. My first Star Wars experience was apparently I was I don't know, a couple months old, and my dad took me to see the very first one when it was out. I know I'm dating myself right now. He took me the very first one when it was out, and I think it was because maybe he couldn't find babysitting for me, and he just wanted to see the movie. And I slept through it. I have no idea what was going on in that movie, but apparently I was in the theater watching it. And that was my first Star Wars experience. My second was being scared of the stormtroopers, apparently, so my parents say.
That's actually awesome, and I do agree that Star Wars, it's grown. I think with Star Trek was more of a cult phenomenon. Very, not necessarily a very limited fan base, but it kind of came and went, and you still have people that remember it. But I kind of feel like, given, in the next 20, 30 years, there's going to be very few people that's going to remember what Star Trek was. But as you said, Star Wars, it seems to be growing. It started off as something that, you had just a few people that was into, and the more movies that they've done, it has opened it up to a much younger audience, and I feel like it's going to be something that I'm hoping will continue to be this kind of worldwide phenomenon where you have it growing and more people are getting to watch it. And I'm really hoping that it will be something that sticks around for many generations to come. I would love to see something like that just kind of become timeless, much like Bram Stoker's Dracula did. Granted, I think he was dead for a couple of centuries before anyone actually appreciated what he wrote. But just the fact that, and it's very rare when you come across something as huge as what Star Wars has become, for the person who made it to be able to realize that dream. Many times it's something that happens, long after they're gone, before anyone really appreciates it. And I do hope that this is something that's going to continue on for many generations. I would love, not just for my kids, but for my grandkids and my great-grandkids to be a part of it, because it is something that has grown to be so huge and so popular. And I find it very strange and exciting that it was something that no one was interested in. People thought it was going to flop, and for a very long time, no one was interested in it. And it's pretty much come full circle to where now people are recognizing it, for being this really great thing and are really getting into it. And that, for me as a writer, is exciting, and it gives me hope that one day someone will hopefully appreciate the worlds that I've created and will want to get invested in them as much as what I've become invested in them.
Right.
Well, is there anything that you want to add, anything you want to say to your readers, any particular thing you want to add to the interview?
What I want to say to my readers is I want to say thank you. I have a blast meeting you guys, like, everywhere I go. I'm seeing sometimes I'm seeing new people, sometimes I'm seeing the same people, and it's really encouraging seeing some people come up and they got that look that, is there something new? Is there anything new that I can check out? Or, just some people, they, you remember their name, they remember your name, you go, I saw you at this thing and this thing and this thing, and it's great. I never expected this. It's great that when you go out there, it's almost like you have like this fan family. And if there's any writers out there that, thinking about, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? You got to ask yourself that question. How much of your time do you spend doing your writing? Is it something that is important to you? Is it something that when you walk away from it, you're not really walking away from it? It's pulling you back in. It's eating away your free time. If that's the case, don't be afraid to bring it to the next level. Get it out there. Get somebody to look at it. Get some advice. If anybody wants some advice from me, feel free to email me or Facebook me or whatever. I don't mind answering questions. But if it's something that you really want to do, I suggest you do it, or it's just going to sit there like an addiction and it's never going to go away. The only way that you can get this monster to stop bugging you is to feed it.
Absolutely. Well, Liam, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And I really appreciate it, and it's been great chatting with you. And I'd love to have you back on the show if you ever want to do it again.
Thanks so much for having me on here.
Thank you again, Liam, for taking the time to chat with me tonight. And thank all of you for joining us. Until next time, this is Nicola Matthews saying peace, love, and books, y'all.